you, without anyone knowing, went and saw the team psychiatrist for the Buckeyes.
Which was new. It was a new thing.
Well, for you, what gave you the courage to do that? Why did you go to him? Because that was a time where we didn't talk about this at all.
No way. No way. It was actually a new hire at Ohio State. And when he was introduced to the team, I didn't stand up and say, hey, I just kind of like, most guys were not even paying attention.
Right.
Like, what is this bull, you know?
Yeah.
And I just listened to what he had to say. His name was Bud Ferrante. And I listened to him, and I was to the point, like you said, I was a 5-star, could have gone to any school in the country. My dad played at Ohio State. He was a captain there. I was a brainwashed Ohio State kid. So I went in, expectations was I was going to start for 4 years, win 3 Rose Bowls, like the media, not mine. Media, the expectation was that. And I ran a triple option. I was a wishbone triple option guy at Centerville, and they ran a pro style 7-step drop, old school West Coast offense. And man, I struggled. I just could not deal with it. And I had a really hard time adapting to it. I moved to defensive back. I was covering kickoffs. And then I circled back to quarterback my last 3 years. And I was just at the end of the road. I was ready to quit. I was ready to there was no NIL. There was no transfer portal. I was just ready to go play baseball and be done with football. And my dad was like, yeah, give it another spring. And then I ended up going to see this doctor. And it took, I'm telling you, the courage it took in 1990, 91 to go into his office, which was at Ohio Stadium. They gave him like a little nook. I'll never forget walking from my apartment, looking around my shoulder the entire time, wondering if anybody saw me, and then knocking on his door. And even then, still kind of looking. Isn't that crazy to think
it is wild.
that you're so afraid?
Yeah.
I was like 20 or 21 years old. And I didn't want people to make fun of me. Just to be honest,
right.
I didn't want people to think I was weak because of the way we were trained.
Yeah.
But at least I had the courage to knock on his door. And he opened the door and I walked in. I really didn't know what to talk to him about. He was incredible because he didn't know anything about me. He wasn't judging me. Like if you talk to your parents, sometimes they have an agenda.
Yep.
They think they know what's best. This guy was just kind of like, he wanted to know about my life. He didn't want to talk about football. He just,
right.
So after the first hour with him, I was like, man, that felt really good. Like I left, I was like, can I come back? And then, dude, after that, I was there once a week for the rest of my career. And I really give him a lot of credit because I was rock bottom to the point I wanted to quit, all the way to the point where by the time I was a senior, I was team MVP, most inspirational player, team captain. All these things happened my last year, and it was all voted by my teammates. So I wasn't an All-American. I didn't win a Heisman. You know, the fact that a lot of these guys in the job that I do usually accomplish that. I was just a hard-working guy that came in with high expectations, hit the bottom of the roster, and got back up to the top. And without him listening and talking to me and helping me, I'm very doubtful I would have been able to do that.
My favorite thing about therapy, and I waited until I was 28 at my rock bottom to finally go, is that it's an unbiased person that just wants to help you feel better and be the best version of yourself. Because like you said, there's not an agenda. They're not telling you things that maybe your family or friends want to feed you that maybe not. They don't tell you what you need to hear. Sometimes they tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah.
And so having that unbiased opinion can help you when you're in that spot. And you said the word rock bottom. Do you feel like that was your lowest when you were 19, 20 years old at Ohio State? And would you call it a depression? Did you ever have, really dark, deep thoughts? I mean, what was that rock bottom really like for you behind the scenes?
For me, again, going back to what I'd already been through from the time I was 8 years old and that windy road I already spoke about with divorce and moving here, moving there, moving there. Those were tough times. But again, I was kind of naive and just young. Yeah. And just, this is my normal. But this may not make much sense. I didn't care about the NFL. Like I grew up, I'm telling you, Ohio State football for me was my everything. Yep. My everything. And to be able to play for Ohio State at that time of my life was my everything. And to try to go to a Rose Bowl and represent Ohio State I could literally, if I accomplished that and died the next day, I would have been good. So to see that dream gone, to see the embarrassment only because of the outside expectations of what it was, what it was I was supposed to do. And every time you go home, hey, what's going on? Why aren't you playing?
Right.
To deal with that was embarrassing, but not accomplishing my dream was more difficult for me. So I was never suicidal. I lost all my confidence as a person, not as an athlete, just as just a walking around, just not looking in the mirror, head down. Because think about it, your whole life you thought about this is your goal, this is your dream, and that dream's now shattered. That's where I was. So it was more of, this is all I wanted to do in my life.
Now what?
What now?
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not going to get this. So that's the
Gotcha.
state of mind I was in. I wasn't going to jump off a bridge or anything like that. I was more of just, I'm a failure, you know, and it affected me in every aspect of my life, not just sports.
Well, it's incredible, again, that you had the self-awareness to seek out help. And that was 2-3 years of therapy while you're at Ohio State. Then you get a start. You know, you're a senior. You guys went to the Rose Bowl your senior year?
No. We lost to Michigan, tied Michigan my senior year, and that prevented us from going to the Rose Bowl.
Gotcha. But you got to the point that you had dreamed of being the starting quarterback at Ohio State.
Yeah, I got to taste it. Yeah.
And so that, I have to imagine, going full circle from when you first started knocking on that door and looked over your shoulder and were kind of embarrassed about going or worried if people knew, it showed that therapy works.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. My thing with therapy would be to, first of all, try to align yourself with a therapist that you kind of gets you.
Yeah.
You know, I think, not to say that all therapists are great or they're not great. I'm just saying, I don't know how many people you went to, but man, I just kind of got lucky with the guy that I saw. And, you know, I've thought about other times, you know, throughout my life about, you know, seeking that out. And the first thing I think about is, man, I want to make sure I align, like they understand me, not just like, okay, you know, they're sitting
Listen
there.
Here. Kay Adams, I had her on, and she described it like kind of like dating.
Yeah.
Of you got to mix and match. Sometimes you'll have a match, sometimes you won't. But like you said, it's got to be somebody that understands you and wants to help you.
Did you find was it the first person?
Second person.
Okay.
But that's one of the biggest struggles is finding the right therapist. And it's not that there may be a bad therapist. Look, there's people that do bad jobs in every profession, broadcasting.
It's just whether they fit with you.
Right. And so it's that, you know, or maybe the wrong medication that deters people from wanting to get help again. And so, you know, you and I are lucky that either our first or second try, we found somebody that worked for us. But yeah, Kay was telling me, look, it's kind of like dating. You got to go on a first date, second date. If you don't match, go on to the next one and you'll find your match.
Yeah. Yeah. Good Will Hunting. You know, that was kind of fun to watch that. Matt Damon with Robin Williams, and how they initially, there was no chance. And then eventually Matt Damon came around. But yeah, if first of all, it takes, even today, I still think it takes courage for people to admit that they, you know what, I think I'm going to do this. But if you ever do decide to go that route, number one, congratulations on having the conviction to be able to do that. And number two, like we just said, I think it would be important if you try it and this person doesn't really get you. Yeah. And you're like, I tried it, it's terrible. I'm telling you, you next thing, if you give it another try, you find that right therapist. It's like it becomes a massive advocate to your existence and what you're doing.